Hey, avid listener, this is Dr. John back with the latest episode of the Evolved Caveman podcast. And today I'm really excited because I'm talking about how companies are mangling AI adoption and why fear is driving the whole damn thing. So today we're talking about artificial intelligence, not the sexy version, not the TED Talk version, nor the LinkedIn version where some guy with perfect teeth tells you AI is, quote, unlocking exponential synergies while quietly firing 400 people and replacing them with 3 prompts and an intern named Biff. No, today we're talking about the real reason so many companies are struggling with rapid AI adoption. And here's the punchline. This is not primarily a technology problem, it's a psychology problem. A trust problem, a leadership problem, a managerial problem, and a fear problem. In other words, it's a human problem, it's an emotion problem, which means it's right in my wheelhouse. Because what a lot of leaders still do not understand is this. When people resist AI, they're not necessarily stupid, lazy, anti-innovation, or, quote, bad at change. Often, they're having a completely sane nervous system response to a potentially destabilizing threat. You know, minor things like, will this make my skills obsolete? Will my boss use this to monitor me? Will this quietly raise expectations while eliminating support? Am I being asked to embrace the very tool that may eventually escort me to the parking lot with a cardboard box and a fake smile? You'd be amazed at how those thoughts can dampen enthusiasm. And meanwhile, executives are over on their side having their own panic attack. Because on the leadership side, there's a different terror in the air. If we move too slowly, are we dead? If our competitors automate faster, are we dead? If a startup with 12 people and 3 laptops can now do what used to require a 600-person org chart, are we, say it with me, dead? So now we have 2 different forms of AI anxiety colliding in the same company. The C-suite is afraid of moving too slowly. The workforce is afraid of being replaced. And oh yeah, middle managers, God bless them, are stuck in the middle, trying to act upbeat on Zoom while internally feeling like a raccoon trapped in a vending machine. That, my friends, is not a recipe for rapid adoption. That is a recipe for confusion, distrust, shadow behavior, and outright organizational weirdness. And that's what we're unpacking today. Why companies are sucking hind tit at AI adoption, what the real barriers are, why this should scare the hell out of leaders, and why it should also make them deeply curious. Because the firms that solve the human side of AI adoption are going to eat the lunch of the firms that treat it like a software deployment. And if you don't understand that, you're going to misunderstand the whole damn thing. And yes, I'm also going to tell you about a new project I'm building called Tether, because it exists specifically to address this exact gap. The emotional and psychological mess that companies keep ignoring while pretending the rollout problem is mostly about training and compliance. So let's start off with Gallup's new State of the Global Workplace 2026 report, which makes all of this painfully clear. That technology may work, but the gains are not reliably showing up in the bottom line. Gallup cites outside research showing that despite major enterprise investment in AI, most organizations still aren't seeing measurable profit or labor productivity gains. In Gallup's own data, only 12% of employees in AI-implemented organizations strongly agree that AI has transformed how work gets done in their organization. 12%. That stat is a bucket of cold water. Because a lot of leaders are acting like simply buying the tools is the same thing as transformation. It isn't. That's like buying a Peloton and assuming your thighs will sort themselves out. Gallup also reports that among US workers in organizations that have implemented AI, 65% say AI has had a somewhat or extremely positive on their personal productivity, while only 7% say the impact has been somewhat or extremely negative. But again, this paradox, only 12% strongly agree AI has transformed how work gets done in the organization. So there's this massive disconnect between this helps me a bit and this is actually changing the company. That's a huge distinction because it means a lot of companies are getting local gains without organizational transformation. Translation: Dave in marketing is using AI to move faster, but the company as a whole still runs like it was designed by a committee of cocaine-fueled kittens. And Gallup points to the reason with a level of clarity that should make executives sit up a little straighter and take notice. The manager is one of the main bottlenecks. Gallup says the strongest predictor of employee adoption, aside from technical integration, is whether the employee's direct manager actively champions the technology. In fact, based on Gallup's Q1 2026 US Workforce Survey, the two top drivers of frequent AI use inside organizations are 1, AI integration within existing systems, and 2, manager-led AI adoption. This is not some minor side note. That means your rollout is not mainly about the brilliance of your software. It's about whether the human being managing the team knows how to lead change. And a lot of managers right now are cooked. Gallup's report says global employee engagement fell to 20% in 2025, marking the first time global engagement has fallen for 2 straight years. More specifically, manager engagement has dropped by 9 points since 2022, and the largest year-over-year drop came between 2024 and 25, when manager employment fell from 27% to 22%. That matters enormously because now companies are asking stressed out, under-supported, half-engaged managers to shepherd fearful people through one of the biggest work transitions in their lifetimes. I got to tell you, that's like asking a guy with 2 flat tires to win the Indy 500. And it gets even uglier. Gallup found that within US organizations investing in AI, employees who strongly agree that their manager actively supports the team use of AI are 8.7 times as likely to strongly agree that AI has transformed how work gets done in their organization, and 7.4 times as likely to strongly agree that AI gives them more opportunities to do what they do best every day. But fewer than a third of US employees in organizations implementing AI strongly agree that their manager actively supports their team's use of it. Let me read that again. Less than 33% of US employees strongly agree their manager actively supports their team's use of AI. The manager's support is a monster variable, not a small variable, not a cute variable, a freight train-sized variable. And yet, most companies are rolling this out as if the manager is just a glorified forwarding address for policy memos. No. The manager is the translator of threat. The manager is the local culture. The manager is the person who determines whether AI feels like empowerment, chaos, surveillance, or a slow corporate mugging. If the manager says, let's explore this, people are likely to feel curiosity. If the manager says, which I've heard before several times, use this or be left behind, people feel threat. If the manager says nothing useful at all, people do what humans do best under uncertainty. They improvise, they avoid, they posture, or they go underground. Which brings us to the next massive barrier: fear of job loss. Gallup's latest workplace findings show that in Q1 of 2026, 18% of US employees said it was somewhat or very likely their job would be eliminated in the next 5 years due to technological innovations like AI. In organizations where AI has already been implemented, that rises to 23%. And in finance, insurance, and technology, the numbers are even higher, 32%, 32%, and 31%, respectively. So when leaders say, why so much resistance? Maybe the answer is because people are not idiots, because they can read a room, because they know what efficiency often means in corporate, because they've seen enough reorgs, layoffs, and strategic realignments to know that when a company starts talking like a robot, humans usually end up paying for it. And Gallup adds another fascinating wrinkle here. Among employees in AI-implemented organizations, large employers are more likely to be reducing staff, while smaller employers are more likely to be expanding. In large organizations with 10,000 or more employees, workers were more likely to say their employer was reducing workforce size. In smaller organizations, let's say 5 to 10,000 employees, the pattern flipped. 38% said they were expanding, compared to 33% reducing. That tells us something important. AI is not creating one neat labor story. It's not simply AI kills jobs or AI creates jobs. AI is reconfiguring work unevenly. And when change is uneven, human anxiety fills in the gaps faster than the company FAQ page ever will. That's why adoption gets so weird. It gets tribal. It gets political. It gets sneaky. It gets passive aggressive. It gets very, sure, I'm using the tool, while the person is actually using something else in a side tab and not telling anyone. And honestly, that's not shocking. Microsoft and Asana have already shown us how absurd modern work has become. Workers are interrupted constantly, buried in coordination, dragged through duplicated work, meetings, and administrative sludge. So when an employee finds an AI tool that actually respects their time and intelligence, they don't experience that as rebellion. They experience it as oxygen, which is why shadow AI keeps showing up. And no, I'm not treating every stat from the opinion articles as gospel, but the core observation still stands. When employees quietly skirt official systems to use better tools, that is not just a compliance problem. It's a giant neon sign that the official experience sucks. Now, here's where Gallup gets even more interesting, because this is not only about adoption. It's also about the emotional workplace surrounding adoption. Globally, Gallup reports employee well-being improved slightly in 25, with the percentage of workers who are, quote, thriving rising from 33 to 34%. But the percentage of employees who experienced a lot of stress, anger, or sadness the previous day remains above pre-pandemic levels. Globally, Gallup reports 40% reporting stress the day before, 22% anger, 23% sadness, and 22% loneliness. So yeah, some indicators improved, but the emotional backdrop is still rough. People are not rolling into AI transformation from a place of calm, grounded optimism, or 8 hours of sleep. They're rolling into it stressed, overwhelmed, burned out. And that matters because stress narrows attention. Stress is the fight, flight, freeze response. Stress reduces creativity. Stress makes people more defensive, more short-term in their thinking, more rigid in their thinking, more cautious, and more self-protective. In other words, stress makes people dig in their heels. Stress makes you less adaptive and, most importantly, less open and able to learn. Gallup also reports that leaders have higher life evaluations than individual contributors, but worse daily emotional experiences. Compared with individual contributors, leaders are more likely to report stress, anger, sadness, and loneliness. Leaders report stress at plus 7 points, anger at plus 12, sadness at plus 11, and loneliness at plus 10 compared to individual contributors. That's huge. It tells us that the people running the show are also strained, stressed, and overwhelmed. So now you've got anxious leaders, under-engaged managers, worried employees, and a new technology everyone is pretending to discuss rationally. That's not change management. That is a family systems problem with software licenses. And that's exactly why I think so many companies are solving the wrong problem. They think the question is, how do we get people to use AI? A better question is, how do we help people feel safe enough, supported enough, and clear enough to use AI well? Because those are not the same thing. You can force exposure, but you cannot force trust and a sense of safety. And this dovetails beautifully with Google's Project Aristotle findings, which were published through Google Rework in 2015. One of Google's biggest findings was that top performing teams need psychological safety, a climate where people can ask questions, challenge ideas, admit mistakes, and take interpersonal risks without fear. Translation: if people are scared to look stupid, the team gets dumber. And that's where Tether comes in. Tether exists because companies have a massive blind spot around the emotional side of adaptation. If employees are navigating AI anxiety, layoff fear, reorg fatigue, burnout, difficult managers, and a growing sense that the future of work may be happening to them rather than with them, handing them a training module is simply not enough. That's like giving someone a breathing exercise while the building they're in is on fire. Tether is designed as a confidential resilience coach for employees and managers navigating unstable work, the exact human terrain most companies under-support while obsessing over implementation timelines. Because here's what the research is really telling us. The bottleneck is not just the tech, it's readiness, it's support, it's management quality, it's engagement, it's emotional load. It's whether people experience this as capability expansion or as a threat to dignity. Gallup even says one way to think about engagement is as a form of readiness for change. And if global engagement is down to 20%, 1 in 5, if managers are increasingly disengaged, and if emotional strain remains elevated, then companies trying to push rapid AI adoption without addressing those conditions are basically flooring the gas on a vehicle with 3 wheels and a heavy oil leak. That should scare leaders. It should also make them curious. Because the companies that figure this out, the ones that integrate AI thoughtfully, that support managers properly, that reduce fear, that increase psychological safety, that communicate honestly, that help people adapt without humiliating them, those companies are going to move 10 times faster than the ones trying to strong-arm adoption through policy decks and corporate pep talks. Gallup's own conclusion is basically this. To improve AI adoption and workforce engagement and well-being, leaders should focus on 2 things: thoughtfully integrating AI into existing systems and helping managers actively support their team's use of AI. There it is. No magic prompts, no big slogans, not another executive saying the future is now, like a man auditioning for a TED Talk he doesn't deserve. Integration and manager support. Make it actually useful and make the humans leading the humans less terrible at leading change. So if you're a founder, executive, HR leader, or someone tasked with rollout, here's the question. Are your people resisting AI? Or are they resisting the way that your company is introducing AI? Because those are 2 very different problems. Maybe they're not anti-technology. Maybe they're anti-opacity. Maybe they're anti-hypocrisy. Maybe they're anti-being managed like a line item. And honestly, fair enough. This is why we're beginning to look for companies that want to do pilot projects with Tether to prove its value in the real world, where change isn't theoretical, where pressure is real, and where the human side of AI adoption is no longer something companies can afford to ignore. Because the future of AI at work is not going to be decided only by model quality. It's going to be decided by whether organizations can help human beings adapt without crushing trust, dignity, and engagement in the process. That's the real next frontier. And if you're interested in finding out more about the Tether Resiliency Coach and the pilot project, visit tetheredconsulting.com and click on the button that says Join the Beta. I want to thank you for listening to this episode of the Evolved Caveman. If this episode lit up something useful for you, please share it with a leader, a founder, head of HR, people ops, or a manager who still thinks AI adoption is basically a software rollout with better fonts. And if your company wants to explore a pilot project with Tether, now is the time. Until next time, this is Dr. John signing out.